What's up, everybody? Once again, part 2 of episode 3, Maximum Freedom with Mike. I'm your host, Mike, coming at you from the dungeon, what I like to call my basement office / studio / cool stuff. And I keep getting emails, and it's annoying the crap out of me. Just stop, phone. Just stop. I get so tired of getting emails. 99% of them is junk mail from crap. I don't know. I'm just too lazy to fix my phone, I guess, and change the settings. Whatever. Alright, guys. This is part 2 of episode 3, where we talk about the news. But before I start jumping into some of the stuff going on today, I just wanted to say that I want you guys to follow me on Twitter. I want you to do it. I want you to do it now. You don't have a choice in the matter. Do it. SRebel1983. SRebel1983. Follow me at Twitter. Go to youtube.com. Look up Sanctified Rebellion. Subscribe to my channel. Follow me on Twitter. Visit my website, maxfreewithmike.com. I repeat, maxfreewithmike.com. I am going to be starting up some blog posts, some news stories. Obviously these podcasts will be put up there as well, and I will be doing some kind of, I don't want to say op-ed style stuff, but just content that I deem to be valuable. Yeah, got tongue-tied there. So be on the lookout for that. It's maxfreewithmike.com, all together. All right, guys. Well, in light of it being President's Day, I thought I would start off the news portion of this podcast with something about George Washington, this country's greatest president, and then a story about President Obama, this nation's worst president. It's kind of a nice little contrast. Anyway, I found this story on Breitbart.com, the big government section, and it's written by Jarrett Stepman. It's a very good article, and I'm going to share some of it with you. So if you don't want to hear me read this article, then get lost. I don't like you anyway. All right, anyway, President's Day, George Washington's Republican virtue. And by Republican here, which if you've listened to part 1 of my show, you know how I feel about Republicans and Democrats. Republican means simply a person who believes in a republic. It's not referring to the Republican Party, which at that point in time did not exist, and which still to this day shouldn't exist, along with the Democratic Party. In his first inaugural address as President of the United States, George Washington said, "The sacred fire of liberty and destiny of the Republican model of government are justly considered, perhaps as deeply as finally staked on the experiment entrusted to the hands of the American people." Yeah. On George Washington's 282nd birthday celebration, it is important to look back on the qualities that made Washington such a great Republican leader and the legacy he and the people of his generation bequeathed to Americans. Often mistakenly called President's Day, the third Monday of February officially became a federal holiday in 1879 to honor George Washington. His birthday actually falls on February 22nd. Though there are many other presidents worthy of celebration and respect, none quite matches the father of our country in symbolizing the president's office and the United States. Washington was not only a great leader with profoundly admirable personal qualities, but was the model statesman for a revolutionary new republic in a sea of monarchical and authoritarian governments. Americans first started commemorating George Washington's birthday in the late 1780s, Virginia, and it was mostly celebrated by Federalists, one of the first two parties under the new Constitution. The holiday's partisan roots are not unusual. Celebrations on Independence Day in that time period were mostly orchestrated by supporters of Thomas Jefferson's Democratic Republicans. This trend of associating a patriotic holiday with a political persuasion continues today, as there have been noted studies about how 4th of July celebrations push people to the Republican Party and political conservatism. It is appropriate to commemorate Washington's life on this day regardless of the holiday's partisan origins. As Thomas Jefferson said in his first inaugural address, "We are all Republicans, we are all Federalists." Though the image of Washington is often that of a stiff old man, the epitome of a fatherly, restrained statesman, it is easy to forget what a bold, fiery, and perhaps a reckless young man he was. And let me tell you something, he really was. I spent a great deal of my summer last year reading through a book called The Real George Washington. And it is a fantastic book. It is massive. It is like over like 800-900 pages. It is absolutely astounding. It takes firsthand accounts of George Washington and things from his own writings. So it's a firsthand source, and gives you a great look at this man's life and the impact he had on other people and what other people thought about him. He was an amazing man. There are so many great stories in that book. If you've not read that book, I highly recommend it. It's great. It's very historically accurate. It doesn't cover over the blemishes of Washington and his career, but it also lets you see the man for who he was. Take, for example, one of the slights that liberals tend to give George Washington is that he owned slaves. But check this out. Records show that there were times, many times in fact, when he would go out in the field, get down on his hands and knees in the field, and work alongside his slaves. Okay? And he didn't treat his slaves as slaves. He treated them like employees. He took care of them, provided good quality food, good living conditions, things like that for them. He really tried to take care of them and look after them. And his slaves loved him. So, he was not the typical slave owner, and he hated slavery, and he hoped that there would be a way to end slavery, and that one day it would end, so long as the Constitution was followed, and that eventually when people were ready, culturally, it could be put away. And, hey, that happened. Anyway, having received less formal education than anyone who has served as president, Washington was educated in the rough conditions of frontier life. A prodigious youth seeking honor and glory, Washington entered the military and became a small-time hero to Americans at a young age, fighting in the 7 Years' War called the French and Indian War in the U.S., which he actually sparked in a botched negotiation with French diplomats. Washington earned a reputation for incredible bravery and energy in conducting himself. He became Commander-in-Chief of the Virginia military at the age of 22, stunningly young even for that time period. Though Washington performed ably during the war under very difficult conditions to succeed, his fighting record was not an unmitigated success. The failures he experienced in his first war helped him grow into the leader he was to become in the next. Now, there are so many great stories in that book I was telling you about this particular point in Washington's history, his life. Now, I'm a little fuzzy on exactly when these things happened, but I just want to share this story because it's awesome. When Washington came out of an intense battle, he had 2 bullet holes through his jacket. He had 2 horses shot out from underneath him, and then somebody said, "Excuse me, sir, you have a bullet hole in your hat." The dude had a bullet hole in his hat, 2 in his coat, and had 2 horses shot out from underneath him, and was still alive. He was known to be like the first guy to run out into battle, the first guy to go out there and to be brave, to fight, and he fought hard, and he expected his men to be on the front line. You didn't run away from Washington; that was an offense punishable by death. He would tell them, if you try to run away, if you try to retreat without me giving the order, I'll shoot you as you're running away. That was just, the kind of guy he was. Though Washington performed... Oops, already read that. Historian James Thomas Flexner noted of Washington's early military record in his Pulitzer Prize-winning Washington the Indispensable Man that he was from the first never a follower, always a leader, even if somewhat subject to a greater authority than his own. This quality of always leading but respecting higher authority would serve him well in the far greater conflict that lay ahead, one in which he would undoubtedly become the indispensable man. Despite some notable failures in the French and Indian War, Washington believed his service deserved recognition, and he requested a commission as an officer in the regular British Army. He was denied due to his youth, lack of high aristocratic birth, and most importantly for being a provincial American-born colonial. So Washington resigned from the militia and returned to civilian life. Stumping George Washington may have been the worst decision in the history of the British Empire. And I agree. When the American colonies rose in rebellion to reaction to the heavy-handed policies of England, colonial leaders turned to Washington, who wore his uniform to the Continental Congress as the only man with the recognition and distinction capable of leading the Continental Army. Though as a wealthy man of status, Washington had much to risk in taking up the cause, he believed that in the end, military opposition to and eventual independence from England were necessary for the freedom and growth of the American people. This guy was just awesome. This just goes on and on. I mean, this is a very long article, so I'm not going to read the rest of it. Here is another great point about Washington, and that is that he actually rejected power and stepped down from his position at the end of the war. This was just unheard of. Channeling the famous Cincinnatus, who was made dictator of Rome and returned to his farm and plow when their enemies were defeated, Washington left the military and returned to his private life when his victory was complete, even though he could have selfishly grasped for power. However, before he stepped down, Washington had to make a dramatic stand against a large contingent of his own officers who wanted to make him king and depose the Continental Congress. He convinced his war-weary men to back down after he pulled out a pair of glasses to read a speech and said, "Gentlemen, you will permit me to put on my spectacles, for I have not only grown gray, but almost blind in the service of my country." Awesome. When the Constitution was ratified and the nation needed to elect its first president, there was no doubt that it would go to anyone but Washington. I mean, think about it. They just unanimously just knew this was the guy. There are not men that exist right now in our federal government who have 1/10 of the character that George Washington had. If they did, if they had the firm moral background that these gentlemen had, that Washington had, if they had the fortitude, if they had the courage, they would be totally different. Our government would not be in the shape that it's in today. It would not be this way at all. It's a sad commentary on our current state of affairs to say that there is not among us a man like him. We have all become corrupted to some degree by politics, and we've all become cynical that it becomes hard to believe that a man like George Washington really existed. Surely this must be legend. Surely this is revisionist history to paint him in a favorable light. But when you look back at the documents of these first-hand sources of people who knew him and who were just enamored by him, you see that this man was the real deal. He truly was the indispensable man. Not only did he help lead our country to victory and freedom through the Revolutionary War, he helped frame the Constitution and then served as the first president of this country. This should tell you volumes in of itself about this man's character, and that he willingly stepped down instead of becoming a king, and that he also, after 8 years of being a president, stepped down and gave up his power. King George said if George Washington steps down, he will be the greatest man that has ever lived to have turned down this much power. I mean, next to Jesus, in my opinion. I mean, wow, that's crazy. There are no men like that today in our government. I can say that safely. But that's the kind of man we need in our government. And that's who we should be celebrating today. We shouldn't be celebrating, a holiday off work. We should be sitting down and reflecting on George Washington and our founders, the principles of freedom and liberty that they believed in, the limited government they believed in, the Constitution that they put together to try to protect our rights and freedoms from bloated government. But most of all, we should reflect on the character of Washington and say, why aren't we like him? Why is no one like George Washington? Why am I not like George Washington? Why do I not possess that courage, that character, that moral center? That's what we ought to be asking. That's what we ought to be seeking. I wanted to start off with that today since it's President's Day. Go to Breitbart.com, big government section, and look for that article because it is phenomenal. It gives a lot of great information in a very condensed manner. And go get that book, The Real George Washington, and learn about this man. It will do you good. It will help cut through some of the cynicism. It really will. Now, in contrast to that man of greatness, let's take a look at President Obama. One of my favorite shows right now is House of Cards. This is an original series put together by Netflix, and it follows the political pursuits of Majority Whip Frank Underwood. And if you have not seen Kevin Spacey in this show, my goodness, you are missing out. There is some raunch and some sex, so if you're, squeamish to that kind of thing, or that's something you don't want to see for sure, then avoid, either skip through those parts or avoid the series. Other than that, this series is freaking amazing. Frank Underwood is ruthless politician in this show, and I mean ruthless, to the fact that he's willing to just off people. You just got to watch the show. Just watch it. Apparently, Kevin Spacey says Obama wishes he could be as ruthlessly efficient as his character in this show. Now, I don't know if that's something that President Obama himself has said, but, looking at Frank Underwood and the way he does things, and looking at President Obama's attitude, I'd say that's probably pretty close to true, which is scary and sad. When I look at Frank Underwood's character, who is just consumed with his own agenda, consumed with the idea of being the man in charge, of having the prestige and the power, the control. I see a lot of that in Obama. I don't necessarily know that he's like Frank Underwood and has no other reason for wanting that other than the glorification of himself. That may be a large part of his ego, but I really think Obama believes that what he is doing is the best thing for this country. I do. I believe he is brainwashed by that progressive ideology, and he actually thinks he's doing the right things. And so he'll do whatever it takes to make that agenda come true because he believes it's the right thing to do. But I see a lot of that same kind of aggressive, disregard for the Constitution and law to just try to get your own way. I see a lot of that in Obama, and I think it's telling that he's a huge fan of the show. Like, why does that appeal so much to him? Is it the dramatic storytelling, which is very good? I mean, I can't blame him if that's the reason, because he's very good. Or is it that he sees a little bit of himself or what he wishes he could do in the characters in this show? I happen to believe that a lot of the characters in this show act quite a bit like congressmen and senators in office right now. And I think that's disappointing and scary, but it's nothing that's, shocking or surprising. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. That's kind of freaky. A little freaky deaky there. I mean, does it worry you that he's a big fan of the show? And I mean, if you've watched the show, I don't want to say anything much about the show because I'm afraid of ruining it for someone. But Frank Underwood does things that are horrendously just awful. He's creepy. Me and my wife watched the first episode of season 2, which they put up on Valentine's Day, and it gave us the creeps. I mean, literally gave us the creeps. That's how wicked Frank Underwood is. And I'm seriously hoping that Obama doesn't really want to be like that, but it wouldn't surprise me. There's an interesting video about that. I didn't get a chance to watch it. I just thought it was kind of funny that Kevin Spacey would say that. I don't know the reason behind why he said it. You have to watch the video. It's also on Big Government, or Breitbart.com. Yeah, that's creepy, but I love that show. If you guys have not checked out that show, get Netflix. Netflix is the wave of the future, man. Go for it. Get it. Watch the show. You won't be disappointed. It's great entertainment. Kind of scary, but great. So definitely check that out if you get a chance. I'm going to talk about one last news story real quick, and then I am going to wrap it up. It's going to be a little bit short today just because it's kind of a slow news day. There's not a whole lot going on. This headline caught my attention on Breitbart here. Nat Geo snake salvation pastor dies from a snake bite. Now, I'm not going to read you the story. I'm just going to talk about this craziness. First off, as a Christian, I'm just going to come out and say it. Snake handling is stupid. And if you're one of those Christians who believes in snake handling, you're stupid. It's not biblical. That's a twisting of Scripture. And it's a twisting of Scripture that'll get you killed. Just ask Ask this guy, Pastor Jamie Coots, who not only did he get bit by a snake, a poisonous snake, while in church, him practicing his snake handling, he refused medical attention and died. See, look, I'm a Christian who is dedicated to what I believe. Okay? But some things are just not wise. And this really clearly should have been evident that this was not wise. It's just stupid. I have been part of a church that at one point used to do this kind of a thing, which if they'd have done it while I was going there, I would have been long gone. But this church, I'm not going to get into a lot of the Christian theology and debate and stuff right here. Just a lot of the stuff they believed was not accurate. So it was a very unhealthy church, and it was a very bad atmosphere, very spiritually damaging to be there. And this kind of crazy crap and twisting of scripture is what leads to people doing this crazy stuff, and which gives all the rest of us a bad name, like we're all stupid and nuts like this guy. I'm telling you now. Look, dude, a poisonous snake? Nah. I don't even want to be in the woods with a poisonous snake, let alone be holding one. And I definitely don't think holding a poisonous snake, whether it bites you or not, is a wise idea, nor does it prove how spiritual you are. Where do we get this crap? How do we twist things up so badly? This doesn't just apply to religion. It applies to our political ideology too. Where do we come up with this stuff? So, the moral of the story, do not handle poisonous snakes. They'll kill you. Alright guys, that's all I'm going to do for today. I've kind of had a rushed day today. I've had a lot to try to get done in a very small amount of time. Make sure, once again, you follow me at Twitter, srebel1983, srebel1983. Get on there. Follow me, yo. Get on YouTube. Look me up under Sanctified Rebellion. I got some really cool stuff coming with Sanctified Rebellion. I am doing some videos discussing the basics of the Constitution. They're going to be short videos, maybe 3 minutes long. They're going to be kind of documentary style so that, I can create resources for homeschoolers. As I'm a homeschooler, my wife teaches our kids at home. We're big proponents of that. Ron Paul School Revolution. We've been doing that for several years. I mean, she's way ahead of kids her age already. It's just the way to go. Get out of that public education crap, man. It don't work. Parents should be in charge of education, not the government. I'm going to talk about that on another episode. Anyway, I want to create resources for homeschoolers that they can use for these videos and just the general public at large. So I thought about doing these little mini documentary videos covering different parts of having a basic understanding of the Constitution. I'm not going into individual amendments and things like that, just kind of giving a brief overview of things. And, hopefully that'll be beneficial. So be sure to check that out. I'm going to do one video a week. It's going to be released every Friday. And then after that, I'm covering natural law versus positivism. So, that'll cover from May to June or something like that. So be on the lookout for that stuff. I'm currently writing some business resources for businesses, small business owners, that I will be pimping through here. So be on the, keep on the listening for that there. Keep on the listening? That doesn't even make sense. I'm stupid. All right, guys. Stay aware of stuff in the news. Make sure that when it comes time for primaries and voting, look beyond the R and the D at the content of the character and the belief system and the voting record that these peeps hold. I'm sorry, I'll never use the word peeps again. Anyway, dig deeper, folks. Dig deeper. Oh, also, almost forgot, my website, maxfreewithmike.com. Go there. Every Tuesday and Thursday, there's going to be content posted up. Every day, I'm going to post one kind of like a news kind of deal. And, of course, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, this show, Maximum Freedom with Mike, will have a podcast posted up. So, check it out, maxfreewithmike.com. All right, guys, everybody have a great and safe week. I will see you again on Wednesday. Peace.
Hip-hop vaquero, you want my styles like hierro. Dance Listen, all my words on the edge of Sombrero. The gringos, sing flows, yes, the cockatoy.